It's 5:30, and I am going to call the September Public Safety meeting to order. I am Lisa Dorsey, and I have with me Nicole Shimoni and Brian McGinnis. Any announcements? The second agenda item this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda.
Okay. Hi, I'm Erin Travis. You all know me, 300 block of South Walnut. I love my job at the university. My views are my own. I'm married to a council person. My views are my own. But I'm here because in August, some neighbors came to discuss a public safety incident on our block that despite the residents, the students living in the student rental shot a firework at our house, we couldn't have any sort of meaningful reinforcement. So I was told to come back and keep asking for what are the updates to our point system. And I'm glad about that because most residents that I know have very little faith in our point system. And I'm happy that we're collecting data, but all you have to do, most residents can point to the big house, and like on the blocks with the student groups that has a decades long history of code and law violations. And yet we can't get rid of that group. So I'm not really sure. I don't have evidence. The point system hasn't really helped us. So I'm glad we're looking at it. But instead of just complaining about the same things over and over again, I'd like to maybe suggest some ways we could start a new conversation. So number one, and I'm not exactly sure the process, so please forgive me, but could we encourage the CCC to set measurable goals that specifically around these large nuisance properties that rent to the same student groups year after year? And could progress towards these goals be reported out in December to Borough Council and also to university leadership, and then the same in May? And again, we're narrowing down to these big nuisance properties that rent to the same student groups year after year. As part of this, I would love to see some sort of SWOT analysis where we're looking at stakeholder jurisdictions. For example, maybe not every code or law enforcement violation needs a citation, but maybe a fraternity with a long history of trash violations doesn't get to do recruitment the next semester. And so maybe working together, that's something that could happen. Similarly with that, we do not have to reinvent the wheel. Other college towns have figured this out. Newark, Boulder, College Park, Towson. I just saw another one the other day. Could the CCC take a look at these models and report them out to council? The other thing, I think we need to get a really good sense of how much Westchester taxpayers pay for homecoming. There are events that affect us all, like the Super Bowl, like New Year's Eve, and it makes sense that we would have more of a police presence. That's something we all are involved in. But homecoming really isn't one of those events. Westchester University pays for security and, for their events on campus, but off campus, my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, there is not that investment. And so you have these student groups running these events, and we need to provide more law enforcement. So could we get a number, and then could we compare that number to 2020 when we were virtual? And then finally, I really hope we really start thinking about this as a codes issue. We are in a neighborhood conservation district. We are not zoned for pop-up bars that the fraternities are hosting. There's no laws against being a jerk, and there probably shouldn't be. If you want to sit with your brothers on the lawn and hold up a "You honk, we drink" sign with a pile of beer cans behind you, little ballerinas are going to their dance class 2 doors down, and the funeral parlor that's across the street is holding service. That's kind of a personal decision. But we do have laws about how alcohol can be consumed, where it can be consumed, to whom it can be served. And I think if we start focusing on this is a codes and safety issue, this is a neighborhood conservation district, and we are simply not zoned for this. So I look forward to what everybody has to say. I look forward to helping, and I hope we can move forward with a different conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Cook?
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. I've spoken to a handful of borough and area residents with a combination of over 200 years driving experience, and they all stated the same idea. The students walk in front of cars. And I'd like a parking ticket book. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Items not on the agenda?
Real quick, I hadn't planned on speaking. Lisa Kearns, South Biddle Street. South Biddle Street, West Biddle Street. But since the fire department's here, I was wondering whether council and the fire department had gotten together at any point to discuss what happened at the fire in Peyton Alley last December. And if so, was there any conclusions as to anything council might be able to do differently as far as ordinances or standards or inspection, timing, criteria, that sort of thing? Did any of those discussions take place? I guess is a question.
Yeah, I can tell you there were a couple of email exchanges. Have we met in person? No, we haven't, but I can tell you that we took your comments from last month seriously, and we are pursuing, what those changes can be for fire extinguishers, fire safety, et cetera.
Yeah, that'd be great because as I understand it, like the fire alarms were supposed to notify the fire department. They didn't. It was only thankfully a neighbor saw the fire because that's a 4-apartment structure that was destroyed. So I thank you for that. And forgive, I had eye surgery, so that's why I'm wearing these funky glasses and doing this with the light. So thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we are going to move on to item number 4 and the Westchester Fire Department report.
Good evening, Mark Scanlon, Fire Chief. The fire department responded to 151 incidents for the month of August, with 66 being in Westchester Borough. This brings the department response total to 1,135, with 461 being in the borough. We are currently over 100 incidents ahead of last year at this time. Members participated in 809.3 hours of training in August and 787.15 hours of additional activities. This is slightly down, which we attribute to the end of summer, everybody taking vacations. For 2024, the members have participated in a total of 11,696.1 hours of training and 7,716 hours of additional activities. The department participated in First Responders Night located at Henderson High School with a large presence along with EMS and police. There was an estimated $17,000 in total property loss in August. Notable incidents were a vehicle fire on East Gay Street on August 6th. The department water rescue resources performed a water rescue on August 9th. There was a small kitchen fire on Franklin Street caused by unattended cooking. And there was a vehicle rescue on August 28th at South Walnut and Minor Street, where the department assisted Good Fellowship with several patients. The department saw a large increase in fire alarms for the month of August, with 59.6% of responses being alarms. I'm happy to announce that the new chief's vehicle and one of the assistant chief's vehicles were delivered and placed in service. These 2 trucks are replacing the former Explorers, which were purchased in 2014. They're enhancing the department's capabilities, as well as moving the fire gear from the passenger area to the bed of the vehicle, which reduces exposure to carcinogens following an incident. The ladder truck is also in service and has responded to multiple incidents to date.
Question.
Yes.
I mean, kind of piggybacking off of Lisa's question to us, we go through the report and we hear what's going on every month up, and the numbers are up and down. But, the numbers are great if they help to drive action, so how can we use these numbers and how can we help to, push incidents down and make things better,
So with the fire alarms, we're working with our partners between West Goshen, Westchester Borough, and the other municipalities that we serve, and multiple offenders are being fined. West Goshen has fines up to $1,000, and there's one particular location that is receiving those $1,000 fines. We're working with the fire marshal to try to move from smoke detectors to heat detectors, because there are several located in the kitchen. So they're trying to take action over it to try to reduce our fire alarms. So we also attribute the increase in fire alarms to the increase of the borough residents that have come back with school.
Okay, so let me make sure I grasped all that you're saying. So one thing that you guys are working on is you are recommending to us maybe that we relook at our fines because West Goshen has higher fines or something, and we're not actually fining people the way we should be. Is that
So we're finding repeat offenders. I'll take example of one of the businesses in the center of town. has received up to $600 worth of fines, and they paid them. They've also taken action to correct any default that they had in their fire alarm system. So the fines are working because they're driving home a monetary responsibility for those individuals. But the one problem that we have is a lot of the rentals, the rental company is taking the fine out of deposits. So they're not necessarily seeing it out of their own pocket.
So the rental, okay, so we are finding businesses.
Yes, we're finding businesses, we're finding repeat offenders
And we're
for
find-
residents.
Rental companies, but it doesn't really matter to the rental companies because they're just pushing it to their, all right.
Correct.
So is your question to us, is there a way that we can do that better to hold accountable these rental companies? Because they're the ones that own the smoke detectors, the heat detectors, whatever detectors they have in there, the alarms?
I mean, we're working with one of the properties in West Goshen to change from smoke detectors in the kitchen to heat detectors. And that way, if, Mrs. Smith burns her chicken on the stove, it's not setting the fire alarm off.
But that's how you're working with the township to do that? And
Yes.
so
So that's something that we
That
can
would
talk
be-
to Mr. Metric and to,
Sally about
Yep.
or something, because then that would change the way the zoning officers look at things, or the officers look at things when they go out to inspect the units or the
correct,
units,
correct,
places. They would be looking for heat detectors versus smoke detectors.
correct.
Okay.
And that would have to be in the borough code.
They would need to update in the borough code.
Yes. Now, and that's mostly for the kitchen area. I don't want to, say we need heat detectors all over throughout the buildings. We need smoke detectors as well.
Understood. Okay. So that's good. That's two things that we can think about and noodle around, but keep them coming, like things like that you guys notice when you're out there that you're doing with other municipalities. If you think they're best practices, 100% bring them here and we will talk about them and see if they make sense as well for our borough, because we just continuous improvement. We just want to keep getting better and help to make your job easier, help make the lives of the people that live here and work here better. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4B, Westchester Police Department.
Hello, I'm Josh Lee. I'm the police chief. Dig in. Thanks, Jeff. So we'll start out with the numbers like normal. I'm not very happy to say, but this month we had significantly, we had 3 felonious assaults, which means an aggravated assault and assault with serious injury. Of those 3, we've solved 2. 1 is still open, although we have leads on that we're investigating. 1 involved, unfortunately, a very young person, an infant, about 2 months of age. So we're working on that. You'll see the bump there on assaults, and you also see a bump on thefts and burglaries. If we go to the next slide, we had 7 burglaries that occurred. All 7 of those burglaries occurred in the southeast quadrant of the borough. Obviously, you can see those 7. That's a bump. We may have 2 or 3 per month spread throughout the borough. We had 7 that were in mostly student rental residences and all within the southeast. We combined with that, we've had several vehicle break-ins in the southeast as well. We have reason to believe they're related. At least there's some overlap in some of them. We are investigating again all of those. We have very good reason to believe that we will make an arrest at some point. We have a lot of evidence that we're processing, including video surveillance, DNA, cell phone data information. All that's going to take a lot of time and work, but I hope to come back to you in a matter of, probably months and report that we've cleared all 7 of these. But as of right now, we have not cleared any of them, but that is to be expected.
I'm locking my doors.
Yeah. And I would say it all the time, but a a reminder to anybody that may be listening or that's here, don't be a victim of opportunity. Many of these could have been avoided had doors been locked, windows been checked. So, just to double check before you leave, lock up, secure your house, secure your car. If we move on, we'll get to noise complaints as it relates to disorderly premises and the mission that I've given or been given to report to you accurately what we're doing to that end. So if we look at this first graph, just by chance, this in August we had 39 noise complaints. That was the same number of noise complaints we had in July as well, just by chance. Broken up much differently. More than half of those complaints this month, 22 as we see, occurred in the southeast portion of the borough. So if we move to the next slide, we're going to focus on those southeast noise disturbances. 16 of the 22 or 21 noise disturbances that were reported occurred in what we would refer to as the more densely college populated, student rental populated area, the area south of Walnut Street on Matlack Street and Walnut Street, including the side streets of Union, I said Matlack and Walnut, yeah, Union, Magnolia, Walnut, Lacey, Linden Street. So we see that graph there, more than 3/4 of them occurred there. If we look more broadly, as far as the resolution. So when a noise complaint comes in, I've said this in the past, our officers will go out and will investigate. Not all of those noise complaints end up in an arrest or, well, let me back up one step. Not all of those noise complaints are substantiated or are founded is what we would call. So some of them may, we go out and there's not enough evidence to substantiate charges or a prosecution on those complaints. So when we break it down, 10 of the complaints were reported by anonymous, which means the caller called and either asked not to be identified or just did not provide their identifying information. So 10 of those were anonymous and unfounded. So there, report came in, we went out, and either it was over or it never happened when we got there, and nothing more for the officers to do. 11 of the complaints, so when you look, 11 of the complaints that had complainants, somebody called and reported it, we knew their name and their phone number and their address, they were still unfounded, which means that person either was unwilling to be the sole witness to it, and we didn't have any evidence when the officer got there, or just more plainly, there was no evidence to support it. This happens a lot with, hey, I hear noise, I'm not sure where it's coming from. We get down there and we can't find the noise either because it's over or because it wasn't loud enough to be heard by the officers outside of the source of the noise. If this is too fast or if I'm moving to, please slow me down. 13 of the complaints had complainants, which means somebody, said, hi, this is John Smith and this is my report. And they were founded, which means there was evidence to support it when we got out there. And then 5 of the complaints were initiated by officers. So no call from a citizen, but the officer saw or heard probably, got out and investigated and then handled it based on his or her own observations. When we get to the founded complaints, so the ones where, hey, yeah, there was a violation here, technically a violation, excuse me, they were resolved. And this graph reflects how those were resolved. 2 of them occurred in East Bradford. So that's one of those small pie slices. We'll kind of forget about that one. 4 of them were warned for a violation that was other than a typical loud party. So this month, those examples were somebody was doing construction inside their house. I think it was actually they were putting in a floor at about 9 p.m. That's a violation of the ordinance. We gave them a warning. They stopped with the noise and moved on. One of them was a boisterous young group of people that were singing show tunes in the CBD. We didn't cite them. We warned them, and they stopped. And not at the Performing Arts Center. They were still performing, just out of the confines of the Performing Arts Center. One of those was for children playing. A neighbor called because the people next door were the children next door were playing too loudly at about 6 in the evening. 3 of them were loud parties that received a warning, and 5 of them were loud parties that were cited and prosecuted. So if we go to the next slide, Of those 5 that were cited and prosecuted, they were all in the Southeast. And they were all, disruptive conduct form was filled out for all 5 of them and was forwarded to Sally's, to the Codes Enforcement Department upstairs. If we go to thanks, Jeff. We go to the next slide, same as last month, but just to continue, to illustrate. I value all the feedback. In fact, I've gotten 5 or 6 different phone calls, as well as attended a community meeting, and I've gotten a lot of feedback on what we're doing and maybe what we could even be doing better as a police department and as a borough. The department will continue to cooperate with our partners. I will come back, or an officer, a member of my staff will come back every month and will report back to you in whatever format you request. I hope this tonight was helpful. The format that it was in, I hope, was helpful. And obviously, especially in September, October, through homecoming, really, enforcement is a key. And you're going to see that enforcement piece and know that we are spending significant amount of our resources enforcing. With officers out there on the street, extra officers out there on the street. If there's any questions about that, happy to answer some of them, and then I move on to address a couple of the issues that Ms. Travis brought up earlier. Sure.
So I like this report. I hope eventually then, like, I don't know if it's quarterly or every 6, we see a consolidated report that takes this information and then kind of says, what was the resolution, especially for the citations, once that happened, what actually happened to those along the way.
Okay.
My other question is, I mean, all of this is focused on someone reporting or calling and saying that how many citations or how much activity happens with places that no one makes a phone call? Like, I was in my apartment a week ago and I heard it was probably fireworks. It sounded like gunshot, fireworks, whatever. It was loud. And it went on for a while. I didn't call because, again, I didn't know exactly where it was, but it went on for a while. And I would have thought if there were officers kind of in the area, they would have gotten to it sooner. I don't know if anyone ever did call, but I guess my question just goes back to, like, how many proactive, visits to parties or allowed, do
Sure.
the officers do without intervention?
Well,
or
this month we
reporting
responded to 39, and 39 reports of excessive noise, and 5 of them were initiated by the officers, not by a call. So
Okay.
this month alone, 5 out of 39. Those numbers, that's probably a typical. I'd say between 10 and 25% probably would be the amount that we're initiating on our own.
So that's good that you have that number in the back of your head. Let's start putting that in here too, and kind of tracking that one as well. The ones that are, or does that because my understanding is this is only what people have called in.
No, if we
No,
go,
it was on the report.
Jeff,
It
could you
was-
go back a couple slides? Yeah, that. So if you look at that, the dark blue there at the top, that slice, that's the Westchester Police Department unfounded. So those are ones that we went out to, and we got out, we heard noise, we went to look, not a violation. The slice right next to that, the light blue slice at the top, is the ones that we heard noise, we went out, and there was in fact a violation.
Okay, so you're saying the 13 is where you're tracking those 5s, where they were founded and they were initiated by the police department.
The very last sentence there, or the very last phrase, 5 of the
Okay.
complaints were initiated by police. Those are 5. 3, I believe, 2 of them were unfounded and 1 was founded. Or 2 of them were unfounded and 3 were founded, sorry.
Got it. Okay.
I can certainly put in a better format, something that's easier to digest.
Yeah, sorry.
Or talk slower.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's all for me.
okay. Ms. Travis asked a question as far as homecoming goes. I can't answer the question about how much it cost last year because I don't know. I could certainly find out. I do know that this year we're working off almost the same operations plan as last year with a couple tweaks. But we're expecting to spend in officer personnel overtime alone, we're expecting to spend between $12,000 and $15,000 on that. Part of what happens on homecoming is we ask for the assistance of the Pennsylvania State Police. they send out, depending on availability, but I believe this year as well, they send out a complement of mounted officers, mounted troopers. So 7 or 8 horses, along with the handlers, the riders, I guess, for those horses, along with the equipment that goes along with that. It's a truck and a trailer that can pull 7 horses. It's impressive if you haven't seen it. I have no idea what that costs. I can guarantee you that's more than the $12,000 or $15,000 that we'll spend. And while they don't send us a bill, that's taxpayer money as well. Everybody in this room is, that's a resident of Pennsylvania is paying towards to support that as well. So again, back to that number I gave, that's what we're expecting to pay in overtime alone. There's some other ancillary costs that go along with it. Refreshments, for the officers, some extra equipment that we have to buy that probably rounds out to between $2,000 and $3,000. And I think
That's a good idea. We charge everybody else to have an event. Why aren't we charging the university a fee? Sounds like a fee to me for this event, for this homecoming event. Something that we should talk about.
We haven't charged them historically in the past for the support that they asked for or is required for homecoming. One of the other questions that you raised, Ms. Travis, is around, so there's coverage down on campus, but you were asking for coverage, extra coverage downtown as well during homecoming. Is that something that we typically do during homecoming weekend? Do we up the?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I am sure
Sure,
that I don't
sure.
understand your question.
So what I was trying to say is that, and again, I love the university. I work there. My views are my own. My understanding, I see university-sponsored events on campus, for homecoming. And if something is on campus, then the university supports that, right? But the problem is most of the issue is off campus, and it's organized by student groups, largely fraternities and sororities. It's also Parents' Weekend and homecoming, and these groups are connected to the university. But, for us, like I am the only one on my block that, is with the university. So it's not really an event that, I was just curious. Thank you very much, because now I know how much we're paying for. And I believe there's something on the agenda about reducing an event fee for other groups in town. And I just don't understand, like everybody else has to pay. We have so many, violations and we need help. Like why, what can we do about this? I look forward to seeing.
Right. Thank you for the clarification. So it's the off-campus activities that weekend.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions there? Okay. And then the next is my, what I promised to be a rather quick budget overview, if now is the time for that. If Jeff, you could go to the next. Here we go. Sorry. So this year, when we talk about budget for the police department, for 2025, when we talk about budget for the police department, not a whole lot is changing. In fact, the overwhelming majority of what it costs to run the police department is personnel costs. And of those personnel costs, like 96% of them are fixed. The council negotiated contracts with the employees, both sworn and unsworn, and we're married to them for the next 5 years, 4 years after 2025. So what I'm presenting to you has nothing to do really with any of that. The largest acquisition or the largest bump on next year's budget request for me is going to have to do with body-worn cameras. I just want to talk for a few seconds about body-worn cameras. The police department acquired body-worn cameras in 2018. That's when we started with them. Prior to them, we had different versions of in-car cameras dating back to literally a VCR in the trunk of the cars that had VHS tapes that we switched out. We switched to this digital system in 2018, and it was phenomenal. Unfortunately, we're going on 7 years ago, and that not only is that equipment failing at an increasing rate, but the technology is old technology that's not even supported anymore. So that camera right there at the upper portion of that's a camera in a dock to charge. So that camera that you see is what the officers wear on their uniforms. Those cameras are no longer made, and WatchGuard, which made them, no longer exists as a company, has sold out to another company, and that company doesn't support those cameras anymore. So they've hit the end of their life cycle. We're spending thousands of dollars this year and last year to try to piece them together. Not only are the cameras expensive, but even more so is the maintenance and the data storage for all the data that those cameras collect. So the average officer is going to record 4 or 5 hours worth of footage every day through every 12-hour shift, an average of 4 or 5 hours. And we have to store all of that data somewhere. And if we were to do that in the building, it would be a room about this size full of CDs or DVDs. It's stored in the cloud, and we pay the company to store that data in the cloud. So if we go to the next slide, we've done a lot of research this year. We found another company in the game that really is the way to go, and the latest pricing for them to replace every camera that we have, and to move forward over a 5-year contract for maintenance, for repairs, for data storage, and for hardware. And we're looking over $500,000 over the next 5 years, $525,000. I reported to finance a few months ago that we had applied for a grant, that we were hopeful that we would get that grant. I'm happy to report here tonight that about 3 or 4 hours ago, Mr. Metrick and I both received an email that we were awarded that grant. So we will, it's all my doing. I take full responsibility for that. It's not at all, actually. A lot of people worked very hard on that to include, I should mention, to include Will Williams, Sean Metrick, and Sergeant Jerry D'Annunzio. Without those three putting their heads together, I guarantee we would not have gotten that. And I also am obligated to thank Senator Comita, who I'm sure helped us out through that process too. But happy to say that, half of that cost or more will be paid for by grants over the first 2 years of that 5-year contract. So that's a good thing. I hope to get your thumbs up on that project as we move forward.
So Chief, can I just clarify, because it said $50,000 grant awarded and $225 to be awarded? You got both of them?
Yes. So we got 40 of the 50,000, and that's actually a typo. We got 250 out of 250,000. So actually $290,000 total. That if we do it right, we should be able to spend every penny of towards this. So that's definitely good.
I'm thankful for the clarification. I thought you were still waiting for the 225.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So if we go to and that's actually a visual of the last generation, but of the camera that's more like what we would hope to be outfitting the officers with. Not only does that include a body camera for every officer, but a camera in every car as well.
So how many cameras is that?
So it's 44 cameras, one for every officer.
Right.
Plus, and there's a big difference between the company we hope to move to and the company we're going from. Plus, between 10 and 15% of that number. So what they tell us is we'll give you 5 to 10 cameras in reserve, so that when one breaks, we have one in reserve. And then we send that broken one back, and they send us a brand new one over the course of that contract. So there should be no additional fees beyond the numbers that we signed for the contract.
how much do you pay a year to maintain the current cameras? You said that you've kind of been cobbling some money together to try to keep them together.
Yeah, this year alone, I don't have that exact number, but we're above $6,000 or $7,000 in maintaining cameras, and that's literally buying used cameras from people that are willing to sell. We haven't, but we almost had to buy used cameras on eBay, just because it's old technology. We did not have to do that, but it almost came down to that. And it's not just not to belabor the point, but it's not just the cameras, it's the clips on back of the cameras that break when an officer gets in a scuffle with somebody, or the data port when you connect it, like you ever plug your phone in and it doesn't charge. Well, that happens with the cameras when they get old, and then you got to wiggle it, or now it's not charging at all. And it's one thing to lose photos on your phone of your vacation. It's another thing to lose something that an officer did, out there. And when people come in and complain, we're expected to have everything, on film, and public doesn't want to hear that our charger didn't work. So that's where we're at really now.
I need one more point of clarification. Sorry. 44, so one for each, one for each officer. And how many for each car? Like how many?
And then one for every car. I believe the quote we were given was for 17 cars. We have less than that, but one for every car, at least 14 or 15.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And then if we go to the next slide, I think, Jeff. Yeah. So this is a real quick look at our salaries, or what we're spending when it comes down to salaries. A large portion of that, like I said, is fixed. There's nothing we can do there's nothing to do with that. I'm looking to increase efficiencies next year. I came to you early in the year about an idea to have a police social worker. I'm coming back to you now with a little more information on that and what that's going to look like. I want to be the first department in you can go back to the other one, Jeff. I want to be the first department in Chester County to have a police social worker. The city of Lancaster in Lancaster County, Radnor Township in Delaware County have successful police social worker programs on which we'd model ours to start. Westchester is the finest police department in the state, certainly in the county, and this is something that we need. How do we do that? We currently have a complement of part-time dispatchers. And those part-time dispatchers were needed because we have to run a professional dispatch unit. So we have full-time dispatchers, and when those full-time dispatchers are unavailable because of injury, because of illness, police work is the type of work where you cannot work from home. We need somebody in that chair at that desk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Dave March, thank goodness, runs that unit with expertise. A way for him to accomplish his goal, yet be fiscally responsible after having lost a total of 3 full-time dispatchers over the last 15 years through budget, that we've given up in order to maintain a responsible budget. He started with part-time dispatchers. They are phenomenal. Those officers, those communication officers are phenomenal people that do phenomenal work. We also have had 2 full-time records clerks for the 23 of the 25 years that I've been here. We've had 2 full-time records clerks. Those clerks, they're more than clerks. Clerks is almost an insult. Those professionals are really they are part of the backbone of the police department. They file every single piece of data that comes into this police department. The officers and the communication officers do the reports. These records officers file those reports, send those reports to district attorneys, to public defenders, to defense attorneys, to insurance companies, to other police departments, to the U.S. military, to the FBI, to citizens when they call in. They're always there to answer the phone. They get the work done. Almost 2 years ago, we lost one of those records officers through retirement, and that records officer was never replaced in an effort to save money in the budget, and that was fine. The officer we have now is overworked, is severely overworked in what she does. My brilliant idea is to combine an extra records clerk with an extra dispatcher. So by eliminating 3 part-time dispatch positions and combining what I'll call a hybrid records clerk dispatcher who can be available to fill in when needed as an emergency in the communications room, but also assist with the overflow of paperwork, of digitalization, and eliminating the paper that's coming in, can work more regularly in the records room. That will cause a minor blip on the payroll of the Westchester Police Department. That combined with, and Jeff, if you go to the next slide, that combined with adding a social worker will add less than 2% of an increase to the salary expense of the Westchester Police Department. So the area that you see in very light blue there is the salaries of the sworn members of the department, the police officers that carry a gun and wear a badge. The area in the Well, the next largest area, that medium blue there, is the non-sworn. So those are our records officers, our dispatch officers, our administrative assistants. The dark blue at the very top would be represents the increase. It's less than 2% of the entire salary for the department. It's an increase of 2% in the budget, but it's an exponential increase in the efficiencies that I think we can realize. Jeff, if you go to the next slide. And then as far as the timeline, it's not like on day one, January 1st, we have these people in the door, although I wish we would. It won't happen that way. We're currently 2 police officers short. We've been 2 police officers short since the retirement of Lieutenant Deegan back in March. I hope to have those officers hired at some point in time early next year. Realistically, not until probably March. Civil Service hasn't started a new process yet. We'll hear a little bit about that later. But realistically, we're looking at March there. In a perfect world, we could fill that hybrid dispatch records position in February. And more likely, what would take us the most time to do next year would be to get the right people in the house to help us with the recruitment and hiring of a police social worker. So April is, it would be my goal there. It's a lofty goal. It probably wouldn't be until after April. If there's a benefit to that, the benefit is that at least in the first year of Chief Lee's new plan with the personnel, we're not paying 100% of those extra 2% salaries. It's going to be staggered as we go through the year. I know that was a lot. Certainly happy to answer any questions we have there.
I have a clarifying question. So in the end, net, we would have 1 full-time records clerk, 1 hybrid record/dispatch, and then the social worker, versus right now we have 1 full-time records clerk and 3 part-time dispatch. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay.
That's correct. That's it. I'm happy to sit down.
But yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. The social worker, super important. I mean, I think it's great that you want to go in that direction. So I applaud your vision and trying to be the first. So
Sure.
try to get that person in before April, so nobody, West Goshen doesn't get you, in March or something.
Absolutely. Right. Steal our people.
But
Agreed.
yeah, no, it sounds like a good, I like the plan, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay,
Can I just follow up, Chief?
sure.
I'm James Sargent from 321 South Walnut Street. And I wanted to, your question, Councilmember Simone, sparked a little area of interest, which maybe you know about. But the Westchester University, this came as a revelation to me, and it was thanks to a meeting at Aaron Travis's house. And I speak in support of Aaron, but Westchester University is dry. Did you know that? You can't drink on the Westchester University campus. It also does not provide sufficient housing for all of its undergraduates. So there's apparently something like 1/3 to maybe 1/4 of the undergraduates there who do not have housing on the university campus. And there are a great many who commute in. But the result is that a lot of students from the university are pushed out onto the into the Westchester borough. So you add up those 2 components, you have drinking by Westchester University students off campus in the Westchester borough. So it becomes a Westchester borough problem. And added to that, Westchester University, of course, has its own campus police, but its own campus police can't patrol in Westchester unless they're requested to patrol in Westchester. So it seems like a perfect storm. You have the university encouraging all these students to come in, pushing them off campus for their drinking activities, and putting the burden on patrolling those activities on the borough. It just doesn't seem like a fair equation. There has to be something done about that. I raised it with Senator Comita. There must be others who can address this. It's probably something that has to be addressed with the state legislature. I know the chief and the borough do a great job patrolling the streets, but this just doesn't make sense. With the ordinary citizens shouldn't be paying for the university's students to enjoy their time. And I have nothing against having fraternities and sororities, but in other universities, those are on campus and they're patrolled by the universities, and the university owns them and takes responsibility for them. That just doesn't work here. And so I suggest the Borough Council look into that and maybe put more pressure on the university to take responsibility for this issue, which we all are bearing here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. Chief, I have a question for you. How often do we request the assistance of University Police Department?
I couldn't tell you exactly how often, but only in the case of an emergency, only in the case of, you know, an officer needing the help because of a safety concern, because of a riot, because of, you know, every other officer being involved in something else. The type of thing, it might happen 1 or 2 times a month.
The good takeaway is, you know, maybe we call on them a little more often to police the off-campus, the majority, you know, in the southeast quadrant.
There's a lot of pieces to that conversation. One of which is that there's the only people that are allowed to enforce Westchester borough ordinances are Westchester Borough police officers. It's not a violation of the state law to have a loud party or to, you know, do those things. That's just one layer to that very, very complicated proposition.
Seems like something else for the CCC.
Yeah, one
partner with.
piggyback question. Come on back. You're not done yet.
I tried.
So for that one small piece, if we updated the ordinance to allow for Westchester, no, it's not just an ordinance change.
I
It's-
don't believe that. Yeah, it's not an ordinance change. It's because they're, you know, those are state officers. The same way a state trooper can't enforce the law, the local ordinance of Westchester Borough, Westchester University officer can't enforce the ordinance. We could call West Goshen for support because we're overwhelmed with whatever it is, and they can come and, you know, stand on the corner and ensure the safety, arrest somebody and bring them back to here for us until we, you know, until we have the people, but they're not enforcing our laws. They'd be assisting us, if that makes better sense.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess you know, thinking about what Mr. Sargent said and passing the cost back to the university. And if we can call on the state to help us for homecoming, why can't we call on the state to help us manage their students?
I think you can call on them. I don't
More
know what
often?
I don't know what they're going to oh, do you mean the as far as the police go?
Right. So we use the state police, right, for homecoming. And I understand Westchester University police are not state police, but they are state employees, is what I hear you saying.
Yes.
Right? So how can we expand that to not just be homecoming and not include state troopers,
See what you're
but
saying.
include the Westchester University
Yeah,
police?
it's rare that the Westchester police officers are overwhelmed from a safety standpoint, are overwhelmed with whatever they're handling. Almost without exception, we're properly staffed. We have enough officers, you know, that are working at any particular time because that's intentional. We try to anticipate when we're going to need more officers. Homecoming is an obvious example of when, you know, that's an all hands on deck event for us. You know, we bring in almost every officer that's available is working that day. You know, there's no vacation days on homecoming. This weekend, when it gets loud in the southeast, our officers will be on it. They'll be able to respond to every call, knock on wood, within 3 to 4 minutes. We're not overwhelmed to the point where it's a safety concern that we need this additional support. If that better answers your question. That doesn't mean there's not going to be a dozen noise complaints that we respond to. And like we showed you on the graph, you know, we're going to respond to and we're going to handle appropriately and move on. It's not like we're missing calls because we don't have enough officers.
yeah, I hear you. I think to Ms. Travis and other state universities have figured it out. And we just have to figure out how to get more creative and put more of the ownership on the university as well as the cost.
Yes, ma'am.
More to come. Thank you. Okay. 4C, Good Fellowship. You guys still here?
Be very brief. I see you still got a full agenda up. So I'm Brian Sporick. I'm captain at Good Fellowship Ambulance. So in the month of August, we had about 566 calls total, 155 of which were in Westchester Borough. I know Chief Brogan has been here past couple months saying we've noticed our overall call volume is kind of trending downward, but the number of patients we transport to the hospital is actually trending up, which we're viewing kind of as a good thing because people are calling 911 appropriately and being transported to the hospital and being treated by our providers, which is the intended purpose of EMS. As we've all known, all the college kids are back, so it makes our Friday and Saturday evenings a little more lively than it has been throughout the summer. Other than just normal shenanigans that we've been dealing with, nothing real too crazy has popped up on the EMS side. And then we got Restaurant Festival this weekend. Last I checked, we have 4 providers scheduled to be on the festival grounds. And then all of our 911 crews like to cycle through and get some food and lunch and stuff and kind of hang out. So there'll be an abundance of Good Fellowship EMS resources for the event this weekend. So that's all I really got.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? Any questions from anyone in attendance? Okay. All right, we are going to move on to old business and approve the August 2024 Public Safety Meeting minutes. Any questions on the minutes? Okay. And new business, motion to approve the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County Purple Ribbon Campaign and approval to hang the purple ribbons, something that we've done in the past annually. Any questions or concerns with that? Okay. Motion approved for the agenda next week. Motion to approve amended rules and regulations for Civil Service Commission. The Westchester Service Commission reviewed and approved changes to rules and regulations that require adoption by Borough Council. Chief, is this for you? Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Kathy Wilson. I'm chairperson of the Civil Service Commission. We submitted a copy that the commission had approved. However, with the copy that was attached to your agenda, there are 2 typographical errors at 4.2. So on 4.2, if you have them in front of you by any chance, it said 70% in writing, but 50% in total. And the next line said 30% in writing, but 50% in total. They didn't make it. It should be 50 and 50 in each of those. The third line down on 4.2, the written out says 70%, and then the number itself says 50, and they should both say 50. And the following line, it says 30% and then 50, numerically, and they should both say 50. So with that, we ask you to approve those revised rules and regulations. It's the first time that they've been changed formally since 2016. We tried to modernize, make them fit the state rules, which we had been working on, but without formally changing all the rules and regulations. And we also wanted to do some things such as allow the use of email instead of snail mail to update things, make them a little more efficient and faster.
Were
Happy
those
to
the
answer any
only-
questions?
Yeah, were those the only changes? Because I did see in what was attached to the agenda, there was a 4.9C was highlighted in yellow and it had to do with
4.9.
this, the second, or providing a second examiner. There was
4.9, the polygraph examination was not really even featured in the prior rules and regulations, although actually I believe we've been doing them for some time. I've only been with the commission since October of last year, so I don't have a lot of historical background, but it is an essential portion of the evaluating an applicant for their suitability for our police department. You would be amazed what you find out through the polygraph that you don't find out elsewhere. So,
So my question is that the only change to the civil service?
no, there are other changes.
So how do we know what the changes are is where I'm a little confused. Like those weren't called out.
They were not, the changes were not redlined out, no.
So it's difficult to approve something without comparing the old one to the new one to know what
No,
you're
no, we
approving.
did compare the old ones to the new ones.
But we didn't to see what the changes are.
Correct.
So we can't approve something if we don't know what the changes are, is where I'm struggling. I don't know if anybody else on council
No,
has
I
the same
agree.
question.
I agree, yeah. It would be nice to have an old copy versus a new copy with the changes called out for us. That's what Lisa's saying, that you know what the changes are, but we don't, so.
So I'm not sure what you want me to do at this point.
Is identify where all the changes were made, like what it was.
Okay, there were substantial changes, which I can't enumerate by any means now.
Yeah.
If you want that before the next meeting, that was the
That-
best we could do.
That'd be great. Yeah.
But
Put it on discussion for the
Well-
work session, and then she can go through them at the work session.
We can do that. I mean, but I heard you say substantial changes. So,
yes, for example, the polygraph was never even mentioned.
right.
We had adopted a rule, a change. This was before I was a permanent member. I think it was at the end of last year, or maybe at the beginning of the end of last year, to make on promotions, to make the test, the written and the oral test instead of 70% written and 30% oral, to make them equal. These are all people who've been with the police department for some time, and it seemed to make more sense. We also changed the procedure. What we have actually been doing, as I understand it, and again, I don't have a lot of historical background, was we ask for initial applications. Then people submit their application to take the test. They take the test, and if they pass, which is a 70% pass rate, the same day they take the physical agility test. Call it the physical agility test, but it evaluates more than simply agility, also speed and strength. Then if they pass that, then they move into the next stage, which is an oral review board. Then after the oral review board, assuming we evaluate them then, and then we move them further into the background check, which includes the polygraph test. Then once they pass all that, then we evaluate them for the suitability to be put on an eligibility list for the mayors.
So I think what we need is visibility into all those changes, right? And if that's something that we can do, if you can have it ready for next Tuesday for the work session, happy to review it then. Otherwise, we can push it to next month.
I'll see if we can do that. I'll see if there are attorney kept copies of that.
Okay. I mean, thanks.
But I will not be able to be here next
Yeah.
Tuesday. I'll be on vacation.
You and the commission can decide whether or not you want to present it next week or next month.
Okay.
But we will need a copy of the original and then what was changed. So
Well, we can supply you with a copy of both, but it sounds like what you're asking for is a red line copy.
yes.
Okay.
So we don't have to hunt and peck for where the changes were made. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, and then number 6C is discuss the options available to manage safety and truck at the North High Street corridor. Who is doing that tonight?
So I guess that's for me to do. My name's Anthony Morris, and I live at 700 North Walnut, at the corner of Walnut and Ashbridge. Our property goes down to High Street. I very much appreciate this being on the agenda. I wasn't able to get here last month and have it in the comment period. I want to say one thing real quickly about the police department. We live at 700 North Walnut. We were one of those stats for the burglary a year ago. at our house, and the way it was handled was just beyond belief good and professional. And the police believe, and we believe, that the burglar, who has not yet been arrested, came back about 10 days later to our door at night when we were home, and the police were there in a nanosecond. And the way that was handled was absolutely wonderful. So that's off topic, but it was on the topic before, and I wanted to bring it up. With regard to North High Street, North High Street is becoming more of a speedway than it's been. It's not posted properly, so these guys can't really even enforce the speed limit. I'm an attorney, Jim Sargent's an attorney, any attorney worth his salt, when people get cited there, the attorney's going to say it's not properly posted, and I think the DJ is going to throw the citation out. First of all, it needs to be properly posted with a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, if that's what it's going to be. I'm standing here, I'm very aware of the fact that it is a state road, even though it's been de-designated. I can't tell you that I know everything as to what that means. I don't know what the state can do and what we can do, but it's not only a safety issue, or I should say it's not only a quality of life issue, it's a safety issue. It's become a speed demon road. And I know that the stats are there for how many accidents there are at Virginia and North High, and how many there are at Ashbridge and North High. But there's going to be a bad one sooner or later, because it is changing. It's changing. We're a victim of our success in the borough. We're getting a lot more people in here, and they're going like crazy. So I'm hopeful we can do something in terms of safety to bring down the speeds. In terms of quality of life, I'm hopeful that this committee and the borough will consider either engaging with the state, or maybe we have the authority to do it ourselves, I don't know, to make it a non-truck route except for local deliveries. It's really changed in the last 2 years, maybe even the last year. All the Wawa trucks, they're perfectly capable of going on the 202 bypass and the 322 bypass. That's why boroughs have bypasses, so that people can go around the borough. But they're coming straight through, I guess, from north on 202, and they come right through the center of the borough. And it's not necessary. You can go around on the 322 bypass or the 202 bypass, and you can end up coming right out on, if they want to be on North Pottstown Pike, they can be on North Pottstown Pike without going through the borough. If they want to go even further north, then they stay on 202. It's not necessary for them to be coming through the borough. And I would think that some of our other streets in the borough are encountering the same thing. But I do believe there must be a way to make it so that there are no trucks except for local deliveries. I mean, we're talking oil tankers. We're talking the oil tankers that fill the tanks up at Wawa. We're talking about their long tractor trailer trucks and others. It really concerned me when I thought we were going to have some sort of a depot in the southeast quadrant, and there'd be all sorts of trucks going into the borough. But at the moment, that's not a problem. But I think we ought to look at this prospectively. And I'm not sure how to do it. I'm not sure how I could help to do it, but I would like it to be looked at if you all think it's a worthwhile project. So both speed for safety and also
No
for
trucks.
quality of life trucks.
Yeah. So I think we did bring this up last month. You, unfortunately, as you said, were not able to attend. And I did not follow up with the parking director, but we talked about no parking. We talked about posting the signs. What were some of the other options, Chief, that we discussed?
Let me start by no one street or section of one street is in a vacuum, right? When we look at the traffic, whether it's on Walnut Street, High Street, wherever, it's never in a vacuum. So if, for example, when we close the CBD, the trucks and the cars that would normally use Gay Street as an east-west thoroughfare, use other streets, Union Street, Bernard Street. Every action has a consequence. In order to do this the right way, and what we talked about a little bit last month, and there was an email, I think, between some committee members and one of my traffic officers, is really the model that East Bradford has modeled for us. And that's a comprehensive traffic plan. That's going to take a lot of work by the police department, a lot of work by a traffic engineer that the borough could or should hire. And we can identify those routes that ought to be designated as no truck routes, and make that enforceable, because we can put a sign. In fact, there are dozens of signs around the borough that say no trucks that are just not enforceable, because we lack that data and that study to say why that's a no truck route. So that's something that we can't snap our fingers and make happen, but it's certainly something that that I think council should really look at, should consider maybe doing almost exactly what East Bradford Township has done. Because East Bradford Township went from having no enforceable, no truck routes to having a very clear plan as far as where the trucks can be, where they can't be, and when we can cite or arrest people for violating those things. And then that changes the behavior.
Sounds like a budget item for 2025.
And I just wanted to say, Chief, with that, we had discussed that before. We had email exchanges before, and I brought up to my colleagues about that. And in my particular area on the couple on South Wayne and Bernard, right? We've talked about the trucks that go through there, but there's also trucks that are bypassing or using the borough essentially as like their own bypass. And my concern not only is the quality of life that you mentioned, a lot of older homes, foundations crack, noise, but you have school children. And in particular, where I live on the corner of Church and Bernard, 10 to 12 kids waiting out there. And I know from what we needed to detail is define a truck as similar as what West Goshen has defined in that ordinance. And so that's why I would like to see that hopefully come to fruition. As you mentioned, these trucks shouldn't be using Westchester streets just to get around, and they shouldn't be going through residential areas, and in particular in the southeast, right? When the Wyeth property will be developed. Now, we hope with the GPS coordinates that won't be an issue, but it could be an issue.
Yeah, it's always, somebody's always going to.
So I would hope that we can start to move on this a little bit sooner and later. Maybe we could, I see Kelly is here. She's hiding out back there. And hopefully that, we could work with them to implement that program. But
I agree. I think it should be a priority. I don't disagree.
So who puts it into the budget? Barb is also hiding behind Kelly. How does it, something like that, like where does it go in the budget to fund? Because I don't know how much a study like this costs, and that sounds like that's the first thing that we need to begin with, right?
I don't know the answer to that. I could certainly look into it. Mr. Metric might have some a little more insight than I would.
Yeah, I think the first step would be to discuss a scope with the chief, and then talk to our traffic engineering team so we understand whether we're dealing with a tennis ball, a bowling ball, or a beach ball in terms of the pricing.
May I just
Sure.
make, what Mr. McGinnis said is something I neglected to say, and our house is nearly a full block back from High Street. It's not as bad right now because the state finally filled a lot of those holes on North High Street, which I don't know why they've been there so long. When tractor trailer trucks hit those, we actually feel the house move. So to your point about old foundations and things, it really does happen. So I hear what you're saying here and I really appreciate it. So this is probably more than needs to be said at this stage if this is going to be looked into. My only request, and I don't know the answer, is whether or not the speed limit can be properly posted. And I hate signs. I know they're going to end up on my property and probably put in crooked, but it doesn't do these guys any good if they can't get convictions when they cite people. So I'm wondering if it can at least be properly posted with speed limit signs.
Yep, we can take that away and provide an update.
All right, thanks very much.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for your time. Next item is 6D. Discuss review process to guide resident compliance and improvement enforcement of the violations of the trash ordinance.
All right, so that's me. I put this one on. So oh, I'm loud. Sorry. This also came from some of the conversations that we were having. I also attended the meeting that Erin had at her house. Was it last week at this point? No, last week. But you know, it's come up. I think Bernie brought something up similar, and maybe the Smart Growth meeting last month. But how do we a couple of things? How do we get to a point where we can get the information to the right people regarding our trash rules? And then how do we do a better job of enforcing when they don't follow the rules? I mean, it's kind of a two-step conversation that was had because the first thing is that sometimes the students don't even know what the rules are, like, or renters don't even know what the rules are because they're shared with the owners of the property, but the owners of the property, you know, manage from a distance, or they have a company or something, and they don't necessarily disseminate them in a mindful way. So students don't really know. And then, you know, things are overflowing on a Sunday, and next thing you know, trash is all over the place, especially on some weekends. So if that's happening, then what do we do to enforce that? So.
So, Mr. Metric, I know that there was conversation or email exchanges anyway around a trash enforcement officer, which we don't currently have. Is that correct? Is that correct understanding?
There was a position in Public Works going back a few years that incorporated recycling coordination and solid waste reporting. We've since outsourced that work, and that person in that position did do some routine enforcement of Chapter 62, which is the garbage chapter, garbage and rubbish. Sorry.
Have that one memorized, huh? And I did see, I think, on the code enforcement report, there were some trash enforcement, maybe citations or violations or something on there.
Yeah, we issue tickets, and if the condition's not abated and the fine's not paid within 7 days, it ripens into a citation. And we did issue one citation in the month of August for Chapter 62. If we were to go out and cite a property owner for trash and they abate the issue in 24 hours and pay the fine within 7 days, it does not become a citation.
So, Mr. Money, one of your questions was around, how we make sure that owners are disseminating the information to renters so that they're aware. And then the second piece is how we enforce that, right? And I think, you always get people's attention when you make it cost prohibitive to break the rules. What is our current fine for?
It's an escalating fine. Exact numbers, I'm going to give you general numbers here because I don't have these memorized. I think it's 25, 50, 100. And then the fourth and final fine, the fourth ticket goes automatically to citation. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the number, but it's an escalating. So when the officer is reviewing, officer sees a citation, sees a infraction. The technology we use in the field to issue the ticket, they can actually see the property history right there on their units. They're cell phones with printers wrapped around them. If anyone's got a parking ticket in town, you know what I'm talking about. And so they do that evaluation right there on the fly, whether it's the first, second, or third, or fourth.
So what happens when it's like the 4th? It gets, I mean, $25 is like, not a whole lot of money, right? And it sounds like potentially they just push it down to the renters or something like that. So I don't know if our fees are not impactful enough, and that maybe we need to relook at that fee structure.
Yeah, the fee structure is 30 for the first, 50 for the second, 100 for the third, and 200. For the fourth, it generates a citation, and then the fine can be levied by the judge, and they have a range of 200 to 1,000. And the judge assigns the fine when it becomes a citation.
When were the last time those fees were updated?
The way it's notated in general code leads me to believe 2019 by ordinance number 11. And you'd have to pull ordinance number 11 and see what specific language was changed. But the way general code cites these things, it puts it right above the text that changed.
Maybe that's something we consider updating the fines.
Yeah, so maybe the action item here is to the takeaway is to look at the fines and then look at how they're being shared with renters, and making sure that that's a requirement of the rental agreement. No. Yes, you may.
I just have a question. I loved Chief Lee's presentation where he showed us how many calls did they have, what happened, what was the source. Could we have something like that for trash? Because I know over move-in weekend, we had this horrendous trash pile. We've shared pictures, you've all seen it. And I mean, I don't know if that ever got cited. And if it's only 24 hours and then it escalates, I mean, that should have been a citation. And again, that was over the weekend, and I get we didn't have codes coverage, but if we had more data, because I know it's great. Like I love the online where you go in and put it in. So we ought to be able to tell how many notifications were there, how many citations, and then what happened. And then are our fees aligned with other municipalities in similar situations? So that would be
Thank you.
great if we could get that info.
Yeah, and I see Sally is also hiding in the corner in front of Kelly, who is in front of Barbara. So, if you want to comment on the ideas that you have to help with this issue that comes up, because it does fall under kind of your bucket more than the police bucket, correct?
I mean, I certainly think the fine should be higher, right? I believe most of the property owners, the tickets go against the property owners. So they then pass it on to the students, and, there's many students living at these properties. So if you have 7 students in one of these, fraternity or sorority houses, $30 split between 7 or even 100, isn't much to them. Pardon me?
Not consequential enough, right?
Correct. I don't believe so.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
Do we have examples from other municipalities where they like Penn State area or somewhere,
We certainly can. I don't have that at this time, but I certainly can do research and find that, sure.
That would be great.
Thank you.
And the reporting that Aaron's asking about, is that something you can stand up?
Well, it depends, I'm been told by the solicitor and the borough manager, we have to adhere to right to know laws, and some of it is confidential information, like who is the ticket it issued to, et cetera, because there's actually a due process. They have 7 days, they can plead not guilty, abate the issue, but we can report on the number of trash tickets issues. And we can also report on the number of citations issues if we get to the 4th ticket. Actually, our ordinance calls for a warning, then 3 tickets. So it's actually the 5th, right? The 5th incident where you can be cited, where you would then have to appear in court.
So that would require an update to the ordinance, right? I like the 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah,
That's it real,
Yeah, Brian.
kind of makes it real simple.
Can I suggest we make it even more simple and have it just be $1 value, so we stop playing games?
I like the way you think.
An agreement.
Yep.
And I think the other item too is sidewalks.
Blocking
Sidewalks are a
sidewalk.
problem in the borough when people are walking around with weeds not being kept up, loose brickwork. That's a safety issue. I've sent you some pictures about that. That should be included. I think if we go after the little things, some of these big things maybe won't be a problem anymore, but we can certainly see.
I mean, you'd have to update your ordinances, but you'd also have to update your staffing ratios, right? I mean, you know, in 2019, there was 3 code enforcement officers and 2 administrative staff. Since then, positions were furloughed, and now we have 2 code enforcement officer positions and 1 admin staff for like over 5,700 rental units alone. I don't have the number from 2019, how many rental units there were, but I have to assume there were less.
Sally, I've done the math
Yeah.
in my head, like right back of math,
Right.
napkin math on how many targeted inspections and things that we need to do to keep up
Oh,
with once
sure.
a year and everything, and how many people you have and how many hours they'd have to work a week. I've done some back of the napkin math, not real math, but if you come to us with a solid plan, I think from my understanding, there's opportunity to create some efficiencies in the department, right? But I also would support you coming to us with a reasonable plan for 2025 that could help improve your ability and your resource capacity and ability to support some of these call outs that are coming from the residents. So keep that in mind when you're doing your plan.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's my understanding when there was 3 code enforcement officers, again, I wasn't here, but it's my understanding that one of those positions was dedicated solely to property maintenance. So they were able to proactively on a daily basis walk the borough, look for cracks in sidewalk, look for high weeds, you know, et cetera. But there was also that part-time position regarding trash, right? So now there, so let's keep that in mind too. That just reported to, I believe, a different department. It didn't fall under codes, but that part-time position was also, I think vital, because trash in and of itself is a significant amount of a job and work to keep on track of it every day, depending on what ward, you know, who's in compliance, who's not, what are the issues. There's education component, et cetera.
Yeah, I think the 2 biggest call outs from the Aaron Travis neighborhood meeting was to go down in history, was trash and the noise and everything that comes from all the big parties and everything.
Well,
So
what's
if we
happening
can make
with,
some
with
dents
some
in
of
those.
Ms. Travis's concerns is that they're occurring on a week. We don't have staffing on a weekend. And then the trash is being picked up, I believe, Monday morning. And we have to, our officers have to observe it directly themselves. They can't go on a picture, you know, from the weekend. And then the issue's been abated. It has been removed by the time we can get an officer there on a Monday. This Monday, myself and one of my code enforcement officers did go down on High Street and see an issue firsthand before it, because it was an issue of trash in the front yard. So it wasn't, you know, an issue of waiting for the service to pick it up in the backyard. And we did issue the second ticket at that property, but it is challenging when it occurs on weekends. So.
Well, I mean, I think that's something that, you know, let's put it in the plan then and figure out a way to
Right.
get some staff on the weekends when can be some of the hardest time for some of the residents for what they see and what they encounter.
Oh, absolutely. I understand.
Some of the best times for our college students.
Right. Absolutely.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Right.
Here in Westchester.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
All right, so we have a
Alright.
couple of action.
Yes, we have a couple of action items. And other business? Seeing none, I adjourn the public safety meeting at 6:54.